Dear friends, I would like to request your attention to my Missiologist video presentation. I am presenting the life and the work of Dolly Kikon. Dolly Kikon is basically a cultural and social anthropologist. She's not a missiologist, but I think I can use her work and methodology, and I can use her ideologies and themes for my ongoing research. And this is basically give you an idea what is the agenda of this video. And it gives you biographical overview, and it talks to you about the major works and field of inquiry of Dolly Kikon and what kind of lens she used for her studies and in producing the literature. And I would also like to interact with Kikon's work, and I would like to make it a point to find what is the relevance of Dolly Kikon's work for my missiological inquiry and for my ongoing research project. And since I am studying on Dalit food and culture and identity, and since I am focusing on developing a theology of mission, I guess and I believe Dolly Kikon's work helps me. And I would also like to appropriate her work for my ongoing research. Um, Coming to her biographical overview, Dolly Kikon is a cultural anthropologist, as I said. She is from Dimapur, from Nagaland of Northeast India, and she belongs to Lodha Naga community. Lodha Naga community has their roots to Eastern China. They were migrated from Eastern China. And she is currently teaching in the anthropology department of University of California, Santa Cruz. And she hold BA and LLB degree from Delhi University, MPhil degree from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and she has a PhD from Stanford University in cultural anthropology. And her research intersect with the development, migration, gender, and food politics of Northeast India. These are her major works and essays, and they are Living with Oil and Coal. This explores resource extraction and militarization of central government in the northeast part, especially in Nagaland. The second book, Food Journey Stories from the Heart, it talks to you about the identity and political expression of food. And the third book is Seeds and Food Sovereignty. It talks to you about reclaiming indigenous agricultural practice. She explains agricultural practices of the Lodha Naga community of the Northeast India. And Dirty Food is a wonderful essay which talks to you about racism, casteism, and food stigma in India. It also talks to you about the Dalit food stigma in India. Fermenting Modernity, Putting Acuni on the Nation's Table in India talks to you about how this acuni as a symbol of cultural resistance and modernity. And the politics of dog meat ban. This is an essay, and it talks to you about cultural imposition and indigenous rights. And tasty transgressions, food and social boundaries in the food hills of Northeast India talks to you about cultural and culinary practices from the plains and the hills of Northeast India. So, considering all these works, it talks to you about cultural nationalism, and it talks to you on the food practices and the diversity of food and how the cultural nationalist forces, imposing their homogeneity and their homogeneous ideas on indigenous and Dalit people of India. She uses an anthropological lenses. So it explores how everyday practices like cooking and eating express identity and belonging. And she uses ethnographic storytelling method for her inquiry. And that is actually highlighting the marginalized voices of Northeast India, the marginalized voices of the indigenous community, the tribal and the Dalit community of India. And it challenges dominant narratives of purity, civility, and nationalism. And it reveals food as both a cultural battlefield and a site of resilience. Uh, when I interact with Kikon's work, I found she critiques cultural nationalism. And that is my broader area on which I am focusing my research. And Kikon provides anthropological and cultural analysis on the marginalized communities in India. And she helps me to frame food as both a cultural battlefield and a site of theological affirmation. Dolly Kikon's analysis of food as identity, which I can then reinterpret theologically to build my contextual missiology that protects and celebrates Dalit food culture. So I am basically using her work for this, idea. And Dolly Kikon's anthropological depth and her critique of cultural nationalism and her analysis of food as identity, which I can then reinterpret theologically and missiologically to build a contextual missiology that protects and celebrates Dalit food cultures. These are some pictures I have drawn from my uh, you know North India visit. You can see me there preaching to the congregation people, and I have given the food, the picture of the food I ate with them, and there is a dance picture on the screen. They invites, the people invites us for the service. You can see there, and you can also see um, their houses in the background on the screen. And of course, what is the relevance of Rolikikon for my studies? Mission in India must engage with socio-cultural systems shaped by caste and nationalism. So Kikon's critique of cultural nationalism helps the mission to resist homogenization. Her insights on food and belonging can enrich the contextual inquiry and theology. And she calls all of us for a mission, especially he calls the Indians to do mission to protect cultural diversity and affirms marginalized identity. And in missionary work, both missionaries and the church must engage critically with existing socio-cultural systems. So, for example, in India, the church and missionary movements interact continuously with the broader social fabric, social evil, social challenges. It is the responsibility of the church and mission agencies to confront social injustices, to promote social change and upliftment. And it is the responsibility of the church to challenge caste and community based discrimination so that the church and mission agencies can embody the Missio Dei vision of transformation and emancipation. So, daily life in India is marked by pervasive forms of discrimination, whether it is in the form of caste, gender, or in the form of violence, whatever it may be. It often reinforced through food practices and cooking methods that sustain caste hierarchies. So, in all these forms, we see caste hierarchies. Scholars and activists such as Dolly Kikon consistently critique and resist the oppression of tribal and Dalit communities, advocating for their dignity and rights. Concurrently, under the government system of hyper nationalism and cultural nationalism, there are ongoing efforts to erase cultural diversity and impose social homogeneity. So therefore, the Indian church, particularly as an institution encompassing Dalit and tribal community, bears a responsibility to resist the imposition of nationalism and upper caste hegemony, so that the church and mission agencies can safeguard the cultural and social integrity of the marginalized groups. I mean, the Dalits, the tribal and the indigenous communities. Dolly Kikon was at the forefront fighting for the rights of the Dalit and tribal communities of India. And she was practicing law also. So when she was practicing law, she was at the forefront for the cause of the indigenous community, especially for the Naga community. Since I am dealing with these subjects, Dalit food, identity, theology of mission, cultural nationalism, I think mission theology has to engage with Dalit culinary traditions. Drawing from Kikon, food can be interpreted as sacred and missionary. So, therefore, developing a contextual theology of mission that affirms Dalit identity, celebrates Dalit food cultures, and it actively resists all kinds of caste discrimination and cultural nationalism. And that is the central, that is the central of God's redemptive mission in India currently. So, such a theology acknowledges that Dalit and Adivasi communities form a significant portion of the Indian Christian population and that their social, cultural, and culinary expressions embodies both resistance to oppression and affirmation of God given dignity. We have to affirm God given dignity and we have to resist any kinds of oppression. And how can I, appropriate her work for my field of inquiry? She uses, as I said, she uses anthropological insights to shape, her themes and ideologies. I think I can use her anthropological insight for my contextual inquiry for my ongoing research. Combine her cultural critique with Dalit theologians like Aravind P. Nirmal or James Massey. I can also contextualize my theological framework. And here I want to highlight food and land and belonging as theological themes. So that I can build a theology of mission that celebrates diversity and resists all kinds of hegemony. So I do my study on in the intersection of Dalit identity, food cultures, and Christian mission theology. So the research topic especially and precisely studies this problem. The problem is Dalit food cultures are under the threat from caste-based purity pollution ideologies and the homogenizing agenda of Hindutva cultural nationalism. Therefore, there is a gap I found, and the gap is despite most Indian Christians belong to Dalit and most Indian Christians being Dalits, you know, mission theology has not adequately engaged with Dalit food substantially. So we have to fill the gap. That is my, inquiry. That is my try. What is the focus? The study asks how a theology of mission can be articulated that protects and celebrates Dalit food cultures as sacred and just and missional. So I draw the idea and the methodology of ecotheology and cross-cultural mission and post-colonial critique. So the proposed research in mission theology with a particular interest in Dalit identity and food culture focusing specifically on how mission theology can respond to caste discrimination and cultural nationalism by affirming Dalit food cultures. So Kikon is not a Christian missiologist, as I said, but her work as an anthropologist from Northeast India can add real weight to my project. Hear how she can help my research on theology of mission protecting Dalit food cultures amidst of caste discrimination and cultural nationalism. In order to appropriate Kikon's work for my ongoing research, I would like to request your, attention to these subjects. First of all, I study on food, culture, and identity. So Kikon's writings on food cultures, indigeneity, and survival highlights how food practices are tied up with the cultural identity, land, and belonging. So I can use her framework to argue that Dalit food cultures are not just dietary habits, but identity markers and sites of resistance against dominant caste or nationalist norms and forms. Secondly, she critiques cultural nationalism. She has analyzed how cultural nationalism in India tries to erase or domesticate minority or indigenous food practices by branding them as backward or impure or uncivilized. So this directs me, in my theme as I study on cultural nationalism, as Hindutva forces attempts. I want to focus on my research in the sociological line and the anthropological line to critique, so that this will bring light into dialogue with missiology. Thirdly, I want to appropriate Kikons for the ongoing research on post-colonial anthropological lenses. Kikon critiques how colonial and post-colonial state powers reshape food and cultural practices to fit dominant models of nationhood or civility. So this parallels how mission theology must resist both colonial mission agencies and Hindutva cultural forces that imposed, uh, you know, ban on Dalit voices, ban on Dalit food cultures, ban on all sorts of lived realities. So her anthropology informs contextual theology of mission, moving from her descriptive critique to a theological constructive response. And fourthly, I wanna appropriate Kikon for my ongoing research for methodological contribution. Her methodology is very, very appealing. Kikon's ethnographic attention to daily practices of eating, cooking, and sharing food can inspire the researcher's theological method. So instead of abstract theology, I want to root my missiological framework of my field of inquiry in the lived practices of Dalit communities, treating kitchens, recipes, and food sharing as sacred and missional spaces. Um, in order to appropriate Kikon for the ongoing research, I see bridging discipline in my study as well. She was using different lenses. She was using, and producing literature using different kinds of disciplines, and she was using interdisciplinary method. I also want to use interdisciplinary method. So I uses mission theology, eco-theology, cultural anthropology, Dalit studies in my studies. So it is a kind of bridging discipline. So Kikon provides the anthropological and cultural analysis that Christian missiologists often don't directly cover. So her work helped me in my research to frame food as both a cultural battlefield and a site of theological affirmation. So Dolly Kikon helps the researcher. She helps me giving anthropological depth, critique of cultural nationalism, and analysis of food as identity, which I can then reinterpret theologically to build a contextual missiology that protects and celebrates their food cultures. So this is my video on Dolly Kikon, uh, who is a renowned cultural anthropologist and a social anthropologist. By referring to her works and reading her works, I was thinking I can use her works for my field of inquiry for my ongoing research project. Thank you all.